So as Daniel said, I'm Martha. I teach in the cartography program at the Centre of Geographic Sciences in Nova Scotia, Canada. We redeveloped our program a couple of years ago. It has been a program at COGS since the mid-60s. I have an alumni in the audience right now, yay! We are a part of a local community college system. So this is where we are located in Nova Scotia. The blue dot is where COGS is. The orange dots are some of the other campuses of the provincial community college system. So just a quick history on us. We started out post-World War II as a survey training institute. A gentleman who had been from the area trained land surveyors for the war. When he finished, or when the war finished and he came back to Canada, he was tasked with starting a survey school. It hopped around a little bit for the first few years until he heard about a estate that gentleman from this area had passed away and given money to establish a technical training school of some sort. So he got in touch with the family, applied for the money, and established COGS in Nova Scotia, or Lawrencetown, where it is today. We are a very small rural location, so this is more than Lawrencetown, all of Lawrencetown. There's about 400 people in town. That's on a good day. Maybe counting student populations too. We roughly have a couple hundred students at our campus, so we are the NACIS Geographic Sciences there. Luckily, we have a beautiful site for our campus. When he established the training school there, we've got a couple hundred acres to ourselves of mostly fields and forests, which is good because we have two survey training school or programs at our school, survey technician and a geomatics engineering technician. So they have lots of room to get out and survey land. We also have a cartography program there, graduate certificate programs in GIS, remote sensing, and geospatial data analytics, and marine. I just blanked on the program name, marine geomatics. So very small school, just focused on teaching geographic sciences. I have been there for 7 years, and I primarily teach in the GIS, cartography, and geovisualization program, although I hop, skip, and jump around other programs too as needed, teaching, introductory GIS courses or some CAD classes now and then, or this semester I'm teaching communications, so as needed, we can fill in wherever. My program is now currently online, so it's a completely online cartography program now, one-year program that is not direct entry, so in order to be accepted into the program, you have to have an existing degree or diploma of some sort. So who my students are and why are they with us? We do one-on-one interviews at the beginning of the school year. And just to get to know these students, we found when we turned to an online program that you weren't getting that personal connection anymore, so we made a point of doing this. And by far and away, these are the sort of the common questions or things that people say, the reasons why they're coming to our school, is that, I took an undergrad in geography or something similar like that, but when I'm looking for jobs, I don't actually know how to sit down and make a map. I'm not really sure what to do. I've got a lot of theory. I took a class and we got a lot of theory. We got a little bit of hands-on. I want to know more. Or we have people that are doing a midlife career change, that type of thing, want to get into something more technical. This year, I am lucky enough to have 3 students who are all fiber arts backgrounds and are interested in that and are just changing their graphics focus into cartography, which is pretty neat. So the focus is I want to get brushed up on my technical skills. And as a community college, that is what we are tasked to do. We don't do research like university programs do. We teach technical production skills to get people employed in the workforce. So when these students come to my program, the biggest question they ask me when we're starting to teach things or throughout classes is, why is this relevant? They want to know What makes it important for them? Why is this lecture I'm sitting through today, how is this going to help me in my job? So when we redesigned the program a couple of years ago, we took a year's hiatus from the program and spent the year redeveloping what we were going to teach in it and making sure we were using the most modern technology, keeping it up to date. We shifted some of the focus away from paper maps and a little more towards digital, added some more programming in, tried to make sure we were as current as we could be. We took a really good look at how we were teaching some of the classes and what some of the assignment work was. And that is sort of the focus of my talk today, is talking about how I am making this relevant for my students. I just want to say that I am not the only faculty in my program. I have a wonderful colleague, Drilla Drugovic, who also teaches with me, and she has done a lot of work with me on, I like to think, improving our classes. I hope they're improving as we go. So that's it. So one of the things we focus on now is project-based learning. No assignments where the parts of the assignments are doing this just because. Answer this question. Well, why? What are we going to get out of it? We're trying to eliminate those. I have to say this is a huge work in progress. I know a lot of people that I see in the room here are educators, so you all know how swamped we are, and you cannot redevelop a whole curriculum overnight. So every year we make small changes and update things and make new assignments and gradually develop it. So it's a very in-progress thing here that we're trying to accomplish. So we're trying to weed out some of these older, maybe, assignments that don't have as relevant work. We don't want busy work. We don't think there's a point to it. Our students are tired and just as overworked as we are, so we want to make it meaningful to them. We try and incorporate industry scenarios for lots of the assignments right from the beginning to say, in the real world, when you sit down at a job, you could be asked something like this, or you would do something like whatever. And we're trying to scaffold things, build topics from the small pieces and then just scaffold the learning as they go, increasing the size of the project throughout the term. I'm doing one right now where we built a data set in one class and we're taking it into another class. So they're building the data set in my fundamentals of GIS class, and then they're going to take that data in my map design class and do a series of maps on color theory with the data set they already built. So just making the best use of their time as possible to get the most learning in there. What some of the things we've been doing. So an old course that I had. Week 1, it's a introduction to GIS and ArcGIS Pro software. This is like they've just sat down, they have no idea what's going on. Most of them have never seen a GIS before, so they're really the basics. I used to use a Natural Earth data set, which I'm not knocking Natural Earth in any way. It's my favorite data set in the world. I adore it. As a freelancer and as a production cartographer, I couldn't live my life without Natural Earth. So I would take some features from Natural Earth, download them, make them available to the students. So we'd have some point, line, and polygon data, and I'd just use that to explain. This is point data, this is line data, this is polygon data. This is how we, add data to a map, and it comes in layers, getting the real basics down. But it didn't actually have any meaning. They did nothing with that data set after I talked with them about it. So what was the point of it? I think I may have something out of order here on my slide, but that's okay, we'll roll with it. So then the next week, we talk about, this isn't coming up like I should have been, but that's okay. Next week, we get into talking more about the software, projecting our data. Now in this course, they didn't learn a lot about map projections, that was a separate course, but taking the theory from the other course, how do I actually do that in Pro? So once again, use just a canned data set. There's no real point to the map, so I just talk about how you can change projections. So it didn't seem to absorb as much or as quickly. So instead we've changed it to week 1. I'm gonna have a scenario. This is a real life scenario that you may accomplish The example I've sort of used here is one I'm sort of building right now, and I'm going to use in future classes. But we have in Halifax, a city nearby, there's a university. Let's say the university wants to start putting solar panels on their buildings. They want to start building, more solar arrays for their buildings. Which buildings are the best ones to choose? So that's our scenario. We have to help figure this out for them. So we have a scenario that we want to solve. So this is right from week 1. They have no idea what GIS is. So I talk a little bit about where we could find the data they might need. We go to the City of Halifax Open Data website, download some things. We get some building polygon layers. We get some other base map type layers, that type of thing. We talk about, this is a polygon layer, the basics, but they're actually seeing it in relevance to a real scenario that they're going to use it in. And that's what I use to demonstrate with. Then the next week we get to the projection. We talk about which projection is going to make the most sense to use for that scenario, why we would choose that projection, and then how to go about applying it. Either sometimes I might rid the data of the projection information so that they have to know how to define the projection in Pro, or sometimes I just make them reproject the data, looking at the projection coordinate systems, what datum it's in, what a transformation is, just looking at all that stuff in relation to the specific use of the project. And then the next few lectures, I build on that. We just go with the same data set, going through it. Okay, this week lecture, we're going to talk about fields and attributes in our data. So let's look at that building polygon data set that we got. What are the fields? What are the attributes? Does it have what we need? So I have them sort of walk it through in real life without even knowing that they're going to do the steps in a GIS. But if we want to figure out what building's going to get the best sunlight on it for solar panels, just logically, let's think it through. What buildings would do that and why? And then I sort of talk about how we can get the data that we have to do that for us. So we talk about buildings and attributes. I have them create some new fields. We talk about that data set doesn't have everything we need, but we have another list of data here, so we can use joins and relates to merge these data sets together and build what we actually need. Maybe we're missing some pieces, so we get into the editing tools and the data creation tools and start working on those. Start with data management. So one of their data sets I have them download is a water set for the entire province of Nova Scotia. And it's just massive to work with for what they want. So clipping data. So I just real life relevant examples of why you're going to do these various things. Then we get into the symbology and labeling of it, that type of thing. I just building layouts, and this is sort of their map that they're going to make at the end a couple weeks later. And they're like, wow, okay, I actually solved a problem with this. This is really cool. And I can see how that would be something I might actually do at a job someday. I like this. So that's what I mean by project-based learning. We're trying to get more and more and more of our projects and our assignments like that all the time. The second thing I like to do, or I've been trying to really do, is choose topics of individual interest to the students. I try and give them as much flexibility as possible in their assignments. So they'll have tasks that they need to accomplish, but the theme can be completely up to them. Or they may have a variety of choices. We need to get to this. You could use this software, or this software. That type of thing. Give them as much flexibility as they can have to get the learning done. Mapping what interests them, I find that's always a surefire winner to get them engaged in the content. 5? Okay. They're more engaged, they're more willing to devote the time. If they have no interest in the topic, they're not going to go home that night and do homework. They're going to put it off to do something they want to have fun with. So I try and do that all the time. I find out from the beginning, or we try and find out who they are, what they like, what they do, their passions, their hobbies. So when I'm in the middle of class and I'm trying to talk about a topic, I can say, hey, you're really into forestry. You just graduated from the NRET program. So let's talk about this. What kind of a scenario could we have? Okay, let's figure out how to map that. Let's do that right now in class. It's stressful. I could not have done this even 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I had to have my lectures planned out. I had to have my canned data. If things didn't go right, I panicked. I think I'm just getting more comfortable as an instructor now. I'm okay with things going wrong. I think it's a real life learning opportunity when things, I don't know if I'm allowed to say get screwed up, and if that's a bad word or not. But it's okay to mess up. I think they find me more approachable when I mess up and own up to it. So I'm okay with that. So then I like to do that. Find out, plan it on the fly, and then flip the classroom. Because we're online, I'll put them into breakout groups. Maybe have a few people work together trying to come up with a solution. We get back together, and they're really engaged in how to solve the problem. So it seems to be working so far. We've been getting positive feedbacks in doing all this. And I don't know, it just makes me feel better about what I'm teaching. So I like it too. The third thing that we do, or I've been trying to do over the last number of years, and this actually started well before I was a faculty member at COGS. Prior instructors started really building these community relationships or client relationships. But we really try and get the students working on real projects with real people. So similar to what he just talked about, Bill just talked about with his taking students out into the field and getting them to work on a real life project. We try and do that. Now working online, that has become a bit of a challenge the last couple of years because I have students everywhere from the Yukon, east coast to west coast of Canada. Last year I had a student in India, so it can be challenging. 2? Okay, Dana. Okay. But we do try and incorporate it in. We have a third semester, so it's a 1-year program. We have the fall term, we have the winter term, and then we have a 5-week term in May that is a work-study type program. When the program flipped to being online, we switched it into a course called the Cart Lab, and that I've sort of trying to model on university cartography production labs because I have this dream that I would love to have that at COGS. How that would happen with a 1-year program where there's no overlap is still a big question mark. But I've got plans and I've got ideas for the future. But essentially that May work term, we sort of flip it. So I'm no longer the instructor and they're the students. I'm the office manager and they're the employees. So they're getting some of that real life project management in there. So throughout the term, or throughout the year prior to this, I look for clients that want maps done. We have people come to us, word has gotten around that, hey, you guys do mapping for people, don't you? Could you take on my job or this project? And I try and focus on people that could not otherwise afford to go and hire someone to make a map for them. So service organizations, nonprofits, individuals, whatever it may be. Students get really invested in helping because it is a real project, and I find they really, really learn a lot. And they love the problem solving. So just over the past few years, these are some things that we've worked for. I'll just click on these quickly. I think that was it. So we worked with Lions Club. They had some maps of their locations that they wanted mapped through Southern Ontario. They were also very interested in finding out what we knew about maps for the visually impaired and how to create maps for the visually impaired. And I was a little bit embarrassed to say I'd never really done it. I've never made a map for Braille, in Braille. I've done some work with accessibility in maps, but so we had one of our students last May spend a good chunk of time researching that and trying to figure out, hey, in the future, could we, as a class project, do some Braille mapping? No idea. We'll figure it out. It's something for the future. L'Odyssée de la Culture is a Vimy Ridge memorial in France where there's the Canadians have a big tie to the Vimy Ridge from the First World War. So there's a route that you take from the big Vimy Memorial down to the village of Vinci. And this organization is planning a series of informational panels, 11 of them, I believe, as you walk along the road, telling some of the history of the story of Canadian involvement in the battle. And we're doing some online mapping for them. So that was a really cool project to be involved in. Similar to Bill's mapping project. We went to a cemetery this past spring. Anybody in my student that was sort of local to the Nova Scotia area that could get a car and meet for the day, I signed in a bunch of survey gear from our survey department. We went down to the cemetery and mapped a cemetery. So we got to use GenEQ F90 GNSS receivers using Field Genius data and or Field Genius software, and mapped a cemetery for the day. We also started incorporating the survey program into that because the survey had to do some property boundary work for it. So they got a day out in the field helping out the cemetery map their locations. We got a day out plotting data. That's still in progress. That project didn't get finished, so we're going to work on it again this May. And Daniel says I have to wrap up, so you can read a few of the rest of the groups that we worked with in the last year or two, and any questions. I would love to hear anytime tonight or tomorrow what other faculty people in this room are doing to do this similar type of thing in their classrooms. Carl?
Thanks for the presentation. Awesome to see
Thank you.
other community college faculty talking about their programs, and you gave me a lot of quick food for thought. I want to chat more later.
Excellent.
I'm curious what when you open it up and say, okay, let's figure out how to map that in your intro class. What are some ideas that students come up with that you're like, let's figure out how to map that? What are some things they bring in? How do you, first of all, how do you elicit those ideas from students? How do you ask them to come up with ideas? Because a lot of my students don't know where to start with ideas. They feel like, and then what are some?
So repeat part of the question there for the recording there. Carl was asking me when we do some of this, changing up the course on the fly and asking students for ideas on maps to, we could make or how to solve the problems. How do I do that? Some days it's really challenging. Some days you ask it out and there's crickets in the room and whatnot. I don't want to say that I pick on students, but I'll specifically say, okay, hey Bill, what did you do last weekend? Was it fun? Did you go hiking? Where did you hike? Was there any problems with the map you used?
I had no fun.
You had no fun, I'm sorry. But I sort of do that. I ask a lot of leading questions sometimes, or I'll just ask somebody about, an interest I know they have, and try and think fast enough on my feet to guide them through some, really leading questions. And really, did you have problems finding that, or did you have problems looking for the data that you needed, or did you run into any obstacles doing that? Now, could we make a map out of that? Could we analyze data in some way to help with that and go from there? Sometimes it doesn't work at all. So I usually do have some kind of an idea in my background, in my head already to jump in with, but thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you, Martha.